For 4 years, Neha was known in her small town as the girl who burned her own house down with her little brother inside. No trial ever proved it. No trial ever needed to. The town had already decided, and so had her own father, who stopped visiting her within the first 6 months. Today, she's aging out of the system with nowhere to go but back to the one person who never stopped writing to her. Her grandmother, who lives alone in the house next door to the one that burned. Her grandmother has exactly one rule for her coming home. Don't go looking for your mother's old diary. It was never found in the fire. It shouldn't still exist at all. By the end of tonight, Neha is going to find it anyway, and it's going to tell her that the fire wasn't the first time this family tried to erase a child, and it won't be the last unless she stops it herself. Stay till the end, because the diary doesn't just explain what happened to Neha's brother. It explains who's been writing new pages in it every year since the fire. Pages dated years after the diary's owner died. Neha's grandmother, Kamla, had never once believed the fire was Neha's fault, and she said so again the moment Neha stepped through her door. You look thinner than the last time I visited. They don't exactly feed you well in there, Dottie. Well, you're home now. My home, at least. I know it's not the same as having your own place, but it's safe, and it's yours for as long as you need it. Is the old house still standing? Nobody ever told me if they tore it down. Kamla's hands paused over the tea she was pouring. It's still there, boarded up. Nobody's touched it since the investigation closed. And I'd like it to stay that way, if it's all the same to you. Why? What's still in there? Nothing that concerns you anymore, Beta. That house has caused this family enough grief. Let it rot in peace. Dottie, I lived there my whole life until I was 15. I think I'm allowed to be curious about my own home. There's a difference between curious and going looking for trouble, Neha. Promise me, whatever you do, don't go digging through that house for your mother's things. Especially not her diary. It burned with everything else. Let it stay burned. Neha agreed out loud. She didn't mean it, and some small, honest part of her suspected her grandmother already knew that. 3 nights later, unable to sleep in a house that backed directly onto the wreckage of her childhood, Neha crossed the yard with a flashlight and pried open a board over what used to be the kitchen window. The inside of the house was exactly as devastating as she remembered from the one-time investigators had let her back in, years ago, to identify a few salvageable belongings. Blackened walls, a collapsed section of ceiling, the particular smell of a fire that had never fully aired out, even after 4 years. Dottie said nothing survived in here, but there's a floorboard loose right where my mother's reading chair used to be. That's exactly where she used to sit and write in that diary every night before bed. I remember. I used to watch her do it. The floorboard came up easier than 4 years of decay should have allowed. Underneath, a single leather-bound diary, completely untouched by smoke or fire, its pages as clean as the day it was written. This should have burned. Everything around it burned. How is this? She opened to the final entry her mother had ever written, dated the night before the fire. I don't know how much longer I can keep him quiet about what he did. He says if I ever tell Neha the truth about her brother, he'll make sure I regret it more than I've ever regretted anything. I'm so tired of protecting a man who never once protected either of his children. Beneath that entry, in handwriting that was unmistakably still her mother's, dated a full year after the fire that killed her. She found it faster than I expected. Good. She was always the smart one. Neha brought the diary straight to her grandmother, hands shaking too hard to hold the flashlight steady anymore. You said this burned. You told me it burned. Kamla's face went the color of ash the moment she saw it. Where did you find that? Under the floorboard. Exactly where she always sat. Dottie, there's an entry in here dated after the fire. In her handwriting. How is that possible? Neha, sit down. Please. There's a great deal about your brother's death that you were never told, because your father made sure of it, and because I was too much of a coward for 4 years to be the one to go against him. Then be brave right now. Tell me what actually happened to Ariv. Kamla's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. Your brother wasn't your father's son, Neha. Your mother had an affair years before the fire, and Ariv was the result of it. Your father found out when Ariv was almost 3 years old, and he never forgave either of them for it, not for one single day after. That doesn't mean Dottie, are you saying Dad started that fire on purpose? To kill his own son? I'm saying your father told your mother, more than once, that a child who wasn't his blood didn't belong under his roof, and that he would find a way to make sure of it eventually. I'm saying the fire started in Ariv's room specifically, according to the original report, and that your father was the only adult in the house who wasn't accounted for in the 20 minutes before the smoke alarms went off. Then why did everyone let people believe it was me? Kamla's eyes filled. Because you were the one who woke up screaming, covered in soot, trying to get back into that room to save him. And your father needed someone else's name attached to that fire besides his own. So he let the town believe it was grief that made you do something unthinkable, instead of ever letting anyone ask the real question. None of that explains the entries dated after she died, Dottie. She's been gone 4 years. Who's been writing in this diary? Kamla didn't answer right away. She reached out and turned to a page further in, an entry dated only 3 months earlier. He thinks it's over because Neha's locked away and no one asks questions anymore. He's wrong. I promised my son I wouldn't let his death be buried under a lie forever, and I intend to keep that promise, even if I have to keep this diary going myself to do it. Your mother made me a promise the week before the fire, Neha, that if anything ever happened to her, and the truth about your father and your brother stayed buried, she'd find a way to make sure it came out eventually. I didn't believe in things like that back then. I'm not sure I fully believe it now, sitting here with this in my hands. But I've been finding new pages in that house every few months since the fire, in her handwriting, exactly like this one, and every single time I've hidden them, because I was afraid of what your father would do if he ever found out she was still, somehow, keeping her word. Where is he now? My father. He remarried 2 years ago, moved 2 towns over. As far as I know, he's never once come back to look at that house. Then it's time he did. Neha found her father, Vikram, at his new house that same week, the diary held tightly against her chest like the only piece of evidence that had ever existed on her side of the story. Neha, I wasn't expecting you. You look well. I read the diary, Dad. All of it. Every entry, including the ones dated after Mom died. Vikram's expression flickered, just once, before he rearranged it into practiced calm. I don't know what you're talking about. Whatever that book is, it's not something I've seen. Your mother's diary burned with the rest of the house. Then explain to me how it's sitting in my hands right now, completely untouched, with entries in her handwriting dated months ago. Explain that, and I'll believe whatever you want me to believe about that night. Neha, you spent 4 years in a facility being told you'd done something terrible. I understand you're looking for someone else to blame. That's a natural reaction. But it doesn't make it true. Ariv wasn't your son. You found out and you never forgave either of them. The fire started in his room. And you let the entire town believe I did it, so nobody would ever look closely enough at you. Vikram's calm finally cracked. You don't understand what your mother put me through, keeping that secret from me for 3 years. You don't understand what it does to a man to raise another man's child as his own and never once be told the truth. So you decided a 3-year-old deserved to die for it. I never said that. I never touched that boy. I don't know how that fire started any more than the investigators did. The diary in Neha's hands opened on its own, pages turning rapidly to a single fresh entry that hadn't been there minutes earlier, the ink still slightly wet. Ask him about the space heater he moved into Ariv's room that night, and why he told the investigators it had been there for weeks. Neha read the line aloud, watching every trace of composure leave her father's face at once. There's no way you could know that. That detail was never made public. It was in the original report, sealed because you were a minor at the time. Who told you that? She did. Neha held the diary up, hands no longer shaking at all. She's been telling anyone who'll finally listen, Dad, for 4 years. You just made sure I was too far away to hear her. Vikram didn't confirm anything else that day. He didn't have to. Within a month, spurred by Neha formally requesting her sealed juvenile file be reopened and the diary submitted as evidence, The original fire investigation was re-examined, and the space heater detail, buried and unexplained for 4 years, was finally given the scrutiny it should have received from the very beginning. Neha's record was formally cleared 8 months later. Her father was never convicted of anything directly. There was no way, after 4 years, to prove intent beyond doubt. But the town that had spent 4 years calling her a monster finally, quietly, stopped saying her name that way at all. Neha kept the diary. She still opens it sometimes, on nights she can't sleep, though it's been over a year now since a single new page appeared in her mother's handwriting. The final entry, the one she reads most often, isn't dated at all. I couldn't save your brother, and I couldn't undo what happened to you those 4 years you spent paying for something that was never yours to carry. But I promised him, and I promised myself, that the truth wouldn't stay buried with us. Didn't. You made sure of that yourself in the end. I just helped you find the floorboard. If the person you trusted most had spent 4 years letting the world believe the worst about you, just to protect themselves, would you want the truth, even if no court could ever fully punish them for it? That's the story of the diary that wasn't supposed to survive. If you want more stories like this, let us know in the comments and subscribe for the next one.